Okay. And Chris Seale, for those of you that don't know him, he's the owner of Conceal. That's conceal.com, CONSEALE.com. He's a concealed weapons certification person, and he's a course instructor for weapons certification renewal, California Hunter Safety courses, California Fish and Game Hunter Safety course, and NRA certified instructor for pistol, shotgun, and personal protection in the home. So everybody, let's give a hand for Chris Seale and welcome him up here.
Thank you. Wow, what a great night. You guys are awesome. I've lived my life through Bill Pierce, through you guys, so it's kind of fun. Anyway, they wanted me to speak on Second Amendment issues, and really it's, in California, it's sort of a degradation in the Second Amendment. And it's been a slow process for a lot of years. Last year it really ramped up. And unprecedented in California last year, early in the year, late February, early March, our lieutenant governor, and I'll paraphrase, he got together with some of his cronies and he decided that he basically stated that he was going to go after firearms and firearms owners in California and how we store our firearms, just everything they could dream up, and sort of set the Constitution aside and just attack everything in California on the Second Amendment. Well, also unprecedented was that the legislature took that as a challenge. And they said, whatever you think you can do in November through the ballot initiative, we will attack it before you can do it. And so as Gavin Newsom and his group was putting stuff forward, the legislature would run rampant with it, and in some places run the same theme but try to contradict each other in it. Also unprecedented is that some of the legislation that was passed by our legislature in both the Senate and the Assembly, they would put in there that this statute or regulation cannot be changed by the initiative process. And that's in fact not true. We have the legal right to do that. The initiative actually had in it that no regulation or statute can stand unless it enhances the intent of the proposition. And we've all, I don't know if we all have, but I've read a lot of the propositions and different laws as they're coming through, and there's strike-throughs and italics, and sometimes it's in red. It tells you exactly what it's going to say. So they were trying to write laws based on intent through the proposition process. And when it all came out at the end, they changed some pretty significant things in there. Are you guys concerned with how some of the specifics of what they changed and how they targeted? Yes, I'm seeing a few yeses. One of the things that they went after was magazines. And they've had this slow attack on our magazines for years. The first one was back in 2000, and that's where they said if it's over 10 rounds, you can no longer bring it into California. But if it's over 10 rounds and you already own it and it's for a pistol, you can keep it. But rifles, those are all bad, and a bunch of different things like that. Well, last year, competing against each other was Prop 63 and the legislature in the magazine ban. And one of the things they did with the legislature is that they banned any magazines over 10 rounds. And they said if it's ever able or capable of having more than 10 rounds, then it's prohibited, unless your manufacturer of your pistol never offered a 10 round. So they're throwing these little sliders in there on this stuff, but then along comes Prop 63, gets passed in November. And Prop 63 says, absolutely not. If it was ever over 10 rounds, it's completely prohibited. The problem with that is there's a lot of handguns out there that they don't make a 10 round for. And I own one. Some of you may have old Beretta P95s and different things like that, that there's a lot of firearms they don't make 10 rounds for. Well, essentially at that point you own a paperweight according to Prop 63, because you can't have the magazine for it. Now, on the backside of all of these crazy laws, and this is just one of them, is a tremendous amount of lawsuits that have been filed, both by the NRA, the California Rifle and Pistol Association, the Firearms Policy Coalition, other grassroots groups. There are people suing the legislature over the fact that they failed to do their job correctly. In some cases, they would take a bill that had been through the Assembly Subcommittee, the Assembly Finance Committee, and voted on by the Assembly, and it went into the Senate, and it went through all their subcommittees, and then on a Tuesday, they would strip out all the information in the bill that maybe had to do with golf carts or how to raise chickens or whatever, and they would insert firearms language into it and vote on it on a Thursday. Even though their own statutes and guidelines said, look, if it has a financial component for any, whether it's a local or a state agency to enforce or anything like that, it has to go back through the committees. But they didn't care. They just vote on it and send it up. So there's people suing the legislature over the fact that they're, well, criminally insane, but they're really could care less about Second Amendment issues. They care about the process and the Constitution and different things like that, whether it's the state or the federal Constitution. So they really went completely out of control up there. And then, as if the magazines weren't enough, back to the magazines. The lawsuit that was filed by the NRA and the California Rifle and Pistol Association was under the Fifth Amendment. And that was, if you ban magazines and essentially render the firearms useless, that's illegal under the Fifth Amendment. And the judge down south agreed with them. So where that goes from here, of course the state will appeal it. So they'll sue us with our own money. But those things are working through. And then they decided that assault weapons are bad again. And I mean, I have spent my entire adult life complying with California law, and they are going back and retroactively changing the law. It's very similar that if you did 35 miles an hour on Bridge Street yesterday, and then today they change the speed limit and give you a ticket. They're changing the laws retroactively and creating taking lawful abiding citizens and making them criminals. And so under the rifle ban, they have changed the scope of what they consider an assault weapon, which frankly, they sort of banned assault weapons for you and I in 1934. Al Capone was still running the streets. I forget the name of the federal act, but there was a federal act back then. You can still get certain weapons under the federal government licensing and different things like that. They are available to us, but frankly, none of us would probably qualify. It's sort of a need thing, I guess. But with the assault weapons, they've keep redefining, and what they've said now is basically any conventional firearm that's made on sort of the M16 platform, and AR-15 doesn't stand for assault rifle, it stands for Armalite rifle. That came out of right after Vietnam. Armalite was the first one to make one. So AR actually stands for Armalite rifle, but AR-15 is sort of the slang for it. Anything that looks like one of those now is considered an assault weapon, and they want you to register it. The problem with the registration is, first of all, you're sort of registering it with the DMV, so we'll see how that goes. But once you register it, you lose certain legal rights to it. In other words, you could never give it to your child. You couldn't gift it to your father. You may be able to sell it out of state with enough paperwork. But if you die in a car accident, the state will come take your personal property. And because it can't be transferred in the state, and the only legal owner of that is now deceased. So, and frankly, I've read books on it. If you die and the state takes your personal property, that's called communism. And so, there's a lot of ways that you can stay within the law and not have to register it. You can go featureless, which is where you put these goofy little handles on it and different stuff like that. You can simply take it apart. There's a lot of different things. But the problem with the registry is that now it's it's a public document. So anybody that says, I'd like to know who owns an assault weapon in my neighborhood, they can petition and get that information. It's a public document. So just like if you're a CCW holder, they can petition and get the names of CCW holders in Sutter County, things like that. It's a public document. Let's see. Ammunition. Whew. This is where they're going to get us. And, you know, we've been sort of being pecked to death by a chicken for a long time. First it started with, you know, in the Condor area, we can't use lead ammo for hunting. And then you know, of course, we've not been able to use for years lead with waterfowl. And then they continued it now where it's going to be if it's a federal or a state preserve. Well, several times in the past they have tried to ban lead ammo outright. And the last time they did it, they wanted to do it similar to parts per billion, like drinking water. So, and they wanted to ban all lead ammo on hand. So if you've got 5,000 rounds of .22 long rifle or target rounds for your shotgun, it would be banned. It's ammo, banned. It makes no sense. And what's that? Yeah. And also with the ammunition ban, every time they've tried to tax ammunition, and they've tried it 2 times for sure. One, it really never got off the ground. But they wanted to do it a nickel a round. But what they couldn't control was the commerce of the ammunition. Well, now they've written into law how they control the commerce of ammunition. So after January 1st of next year, December 31st of this year, but beginning January 1st of next year, you can no longer import into California ammunition. So if I were to go over to the desert and I stop at Shields and buy a bunch of ammo for the training, and let's say I buy 600 rounds but I only shoot 400, I can't bring 200 rounds back into California. The most you can return to California with is 35 rounds. So, and that holds true for shotguns. Yeah, so it's completely out of control. And then if you do order ammunition online, it has to go to a licensed ammunition dealer, and then they will intake it in, catalog it in, and then issue it to you. And that's how it begins. After July 1st of 2019, every ammunition purchaser will be required to present a driver's license, an ammunition purchaser's card, which is a fee or a tax that you pay every year to get your card renewed, and then it will be a legal transaction between you and the dealer when you get that ammunition. It will basically be grossed to you. So if you and someone else are at the range and he says, hey, I've run out of 9mm or whatever you're shooting, and you go, here's a handful. At that point, you're both criminals because he received ill-gotten ammo and you provided it. So it is very bad. And now that they have 100% control on the commerce, the taxes will come. Just as they do with alcohol, cigarettes, fuel. I don't even smoke. And I was in Walgreens the other day, and the guy was bemoaning the fact that I think it was $10 a pack for cigarettes. I don't even smoke, and that made me mad. So, look at our fuel taxes. They just decided by fiat, you're not paying enough. So they doubled your taxes or whatever they did on the fuel, raised it on diesel consumption, and then said, we're going to tax that tax as well. I mean, it's out of control. So we know that's coming for ammunition. So whether it looks like a tax stamp on your box of ammo or a sort of like a cigarette pack tax stamp has a little paper stack tax on it, it will come. And that's how they'll know at the checkpoint at the border over there when they say, do you have anything to declare? At the ag station. The last time I went through there, my declaration was I had a great time. That was all I said. She laughed and waved me through. Now they might check you for ammo. So those are just sort of the highlights, lowlights, or however we want to concern ourselves with it. But it's a big deal. And lending of firearms. Infrequent lending of firearms between teammates on the team, friends, uncles, cousins, that's all illegal now, with very few exceptions. You can lend it to your brother or to your father, But if your neighbor says, hey, can I borrow your 12 gauge? The answer is no. There's a rule against it now. And all this is so that legislatures can go back, raise their hand and say, I have assaulted the Constitution and some of the citizens of California, and they get reelected. So, you know, when I teach this stuff in my class, I always say, have I convinced you to look into the state of Jefferson yet? And it's an easy pitch to make. This is just part of the information. I have a whole nother book that I go through in my classes to illustrate all of the laws and regulations. There is a book, there's 2 books that the federal government puts out. One book is about the size of a small phone book, and it is all of the federal regulations, most of which deals directly with importation and distribution of firearms. So if you're getting a shotgun from Italy, how does it come in the United States? How is it documented? All those things are all in that book. Then there's a second book that deals with just the municipal and state laws. And it's, again, about the size of a small phone book. 50 states are in that book. About 20% of that book, the last time it was printed, which was about 5 years ago, was California. So, and there are laws on top of laws, and some of this is completely unenforceable. And they don't care. They just keep piling it on and piling it on. And it's frustrating. We do have hope. It's not with Sacramento, but we have hope. So I think if we did anything, it's that we're very proactive and that we write our legislatures and that we try to stand up for the Second Amendment. We support groups that are trying to do it, whether it's the Tea Party or CRPA or NRA or your local trap team. These are our ambassadors. These are the kids and the coaches that make a difference when they're in the paper and they're doing absolute excellent, and their whole focus is the Second Amendment. Those are our ambassadors. But supporting the programs that support us are important. So I'll open it up to questions. Any questions? Yes. What was the question? Yes, what about it? It could. There's actually a book, and I forget the name of the group that put it out, but it's how to come in behind something like that and use the negative press to push firearms laws and anti-firearm laws and anti-firearm agenda. And I apologize for not remembering that group. After Sandy Hook, they came out in full force. I work for Caltrans during the day, and frankly, any vehicle parked in this parking lot doesn't scare me. When somebody gets behind the wheel, that scares me. I'm not afraid of firearms. I'm not afraid of people, but firearms don't kill people. I have stood countless numbers of times at fatal accident scenes where none of them were involving a firearm. So they're not calling for banning cars. I have no idea what their agenda is in trying to ban firearms. It doesn't cross my mind how they get to that point in their life. What I have found is that if someone dislikes firearm, there's probably about a 90+% chance they have never handled or shot one. The last time I went out shooting, we had 11 kids and 4 adults. Like to kill me, burned through a ton of 22 long rifle ammo, so I'm always poor on 22. But I'm telling you what, we made lifelong shooters out of that group. It creates a hobby and gets rid of hysteria. And I've had absolute, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but a Los Angeles Jew who said, firearms, oh, I hate firearms. I said, well, have you ever shot one? They said, no. Took her out in the backyard with a pellet gun. She shot aluminum cans for an hour and loved it. And so It just comes down to, I think, exposure. And, you know, the irony to our governor is that Edmund Brown was an absolute firearms proponent. He literally gifted, literally an arsenal to Jerry Brown. And Jerry Brown will go up I-5 at 80 miles an hour with his detail. They'll go out in the not the Butte Sink, but out in the Colusa, where he's building a home to retire in, and shoot all afternoon and go back down I-5 and join his liberal buddies. It is the most bizarre thing. So it's different.
So if you want to ask questions, do it through the mic, please. And I got a question. Three-panel judge back in D.C. just opined that good reason was unconstitutional for CCW. And it's my understanding if a three-judge panel rules on it, it goes directly to the Supreme Court. So a good reason, you have to have a good reason to obtain a CCW. Their opinion was, no, that's unconstitutional. You don't need any reason to obtain a CCW.
Which would support the California judge that brought that case forward. And that's absolutely true. I do believe it'll forward up. There's only, I think, 4 states right now.
Put your mic closer.
Sorry. I kept hearing the buzz, and I thought it was because it was close. Oh, you were gaining. Sorry. If there's only about 4 states that are not shall issue. And of those 4, California is obviously one. I think Illinois, Washington, D.C., and I forget the 4th one. All other states are shall issue. As long as there's not something medically compelling or shall issue. That means if you apply for a CCW, they shall issue. Yes. So, that being said, I think that California and those other states are on the losing end of that conversation. It used to be, they used to always say, as California goes, so goes the nation. And that was true for a lot of years. That really was. And it ruined a lot of, I don't know, things I believe in, I guess. But I'm hoping to see that change. If you voted at all last year, you voted for Supreme Court appointees. Man. And we got 1 so far. Come on. So I'm hopeful. I am very hopeful in that regard.
Is it on?
It is.
Oh. Yes, I'm one of the resident members of the Tea Party here. In one of the past meetings we've had, we heard discussions that if I had an AR-15 or some kind of an assault weapon, I could only pass it on to the male members of my family and not the female members. Now, I don't understand the logic behind that, and I wonder if there's any truth to it.
None at all.
My daughter is real upset about that.
Oh. Tell your daughter she can have all your rifles. No, you're good. There's no truth to that at all. Of course, if you register it, no one gets it, except the state. Yes?
Yeah, they used to have a law, well, not a law, program where you can get a M1 Garand in the Cosmoline from the government for X amount of dollars for protection. Did they get rid of that program?
No, as far as I know, that's the civilian marksmanship program, and those were M1 Grands, and you have to be a member of a club that partners in that program, and then you apply, and they issue so many per year, and the grade of rifle you get is solely dependent on road apple luck.
Luck of the draw, yeah.
I'm not sure. The Twin Cities Rod and Gun Club used to be a partnering agent or member of that group. I don't know if they are anymore, but you might look at, there's a club in Gridley that does different shooting events, and then there's also the Dillman Range, the Lincoln Rod and Gun Club.
Well, was it always that you had to be associated with a club?
Not always.
That's what I thought.
After the Korean War, you could just go into Woolworth and buy one for $11.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've talked to people in my classes that have done that. Yeah, we used to get our M1 Garands at Woolworths in Oroville.
And they won't allow, Obama wouldn't allow the 1 million to come back from Korea. there's 1 million of them over there, and he wouldn't let them come back. I wonder if Trump is going to do something about that.
Who knows?
Thank you.
You bet.
I just like a question. Our Second Amendment, how can the states tell us what to do with that amendment of any of the Constitution? Don't they have to follow the Constitution of the United States? I mean, where do these people get the authority to tell us that we can't do what is, some of them are God-given rights, and yet they says we can't do it? How does that work? How can we get that stuff taken out, or get the people taken out?
I agree with you wholeheartedly. In other words, there's a statute that says it when in conflict, federal law and state law, federal law rules. That is not in question at all. I think honestly, we've done it to ourselves. And I don't mean that personally against you or I. I just mean that for a lot of years, I think we had hope that this would change. And it kept slipping and slipping and slipping to the point now where we have absolutely no say in what goes on in the legislature. We rally all of our neighbors and we vote, exponentially for a proposition in 51 out of 58 counties in California, and it passes, and we voted against it. It just, it's, when they talk about splitting the state, that's been going on since the 1800s. They never intended for California to be this big for this long. I can't remember how many times it's been in front of the California legislature to separate, divide, because it was too unmanageable. The Central Valley versus Humboldt County. I mean, there's two different things there, and I don't know how they can do it, and it frustrates me to no end. And I think that is where the lawsuits that are being filed and the federal judges that are finally saying, yeah, that makes sense to me, is where we're starting to make the inroads. I think a lot of times we just hoped and prayed that this is not going to get worse, that we're going to turn around. And that's, I think, where we're at. And I think we're at that turning point, honestly.
Thank you.
Hold on, Tammy's at the mic.
Hi, Chris.
Hi.
What are the organizations like the California Gun Owners Association and NRA, where are they and what are they doing on behalf of the state of California with just their gutting of our Second Amendment and Constitution? Where we're setting them our annual dues and I don't see a lot of action on their part. So what are they doing, and maybe how can we support that?
The NRA and the CRPA partner on a lot of lawsuits against what's going on. I know for a fact that the CRPA is in the state capitol almost every single day in California. Their lead lobbyist is Roy Griffith, who was the chief law enforcement officer for California Fish and Game. He retired on, let's say, a Tuesday, and they picked him up on Thursday and said, you got to speak for us, because he's amazing. And they are out there working. In the CRPA magazine every month, there are 2 to 2.5 pages of lawsuits that are nationwide, many of them in California, that we're filing against this stuff in federal and state court. And a lot of times you have to start in the state and go to federal and do all these things. Then there's also pages of bills that they're watching, and they're listing the people, the members that you can call. And, last year, almost every day I was writing the legislature, and I was asking specific questions and asking for comments, and no one would ever write back. And then you're trying to do the contact through the legislative website where you have to click oppose, support, so they know which garbage can to throw it in, I guess. But there was this whole process you went through, and after you filled everything out, it says enter your zip code. So I entered my zip code and hit submit, and I got a bulletin that says you cannot comment to him because you don't live in his district. And he's the head of a statewide committee. So I called his office. And of course they acted very compassionate and said, oh yeah, we're aware of that, and we're trying to fix that. And they're not. They're not trying to fix anything because they don't want you and I to have a voice. And I don't have time, because I have kids and a job and a bunch of other stuff, to go down every day and lobby. And that's where supporting the NRA and the CRPA and the Firearms Policy Coalition is a huge group as well, that are out there lobbying on our behalf. And, you know, it's us getting out there and having a voice. And a lot of times we don't have that opportunity because it's a Senate subcommittee that you can't even get in there unless you have a credential. And that's where these, and I hate to call them lobbyists, but they're actually on our side. So I guess there's good lobbyists and bad lobbyists. But you had California state senators quoted on the Senate floor in front of a microphone, just as you are, saying that if you remove a bullet button on an assault weapon, it becomes fully automatic. And he went, oh. And they said that automatic weapons can fire 30 rounds per second. Man, I'd like to shoot that gun. They don't, but man, that'd be a good ride. So they were completely out of control down there. And they would say the most outlandish things, get supported by all their friends, and they would vote for this nonsense. And so I can tell you from reading what they're doing, from speaking to people that are part of the process, that they're absolutely lobbying on our behalf. And, you know, everything costs money. We pass the hat here. There's so many things we can do, but one of the greatest things we can do is become members or life members of NRA and California Rifle and Pistol Association. And both of those things, and support teams like Sutter, or go to the NRA dinners and support the efforts they're doing there, because the NRA takes our money and they support the local programs. And so it's very important that we do those things. If I had more time, I'd probably go down there and get thrown out of the whatever that is, the state capitol as it can. So I don't know. I guess my day's coming on that. Yeah. Anyway, yes.
Okay, I have a question. I was reading some of the laws in California about carrying concealed weapon. Came across one that's really, really crazy, and I'd like to have your take on it. What it was, that if you go in the school zone, and I'm not talking about being in the school, okay? I'm talking about you're in your car and you're driving through a school zone, you're on a public highway. Well, the California law says that's illegal. You have to stop your car, take the gun out, unload it, go through the school zone to the other side, get back in, reload your gun. And I talked to a police officer about it. I said, that's crazy. You mean to tell me everybody that goes through the school zone is going to have to stop, take all the stuff out, and then go to the other side and put everything back in again? He says, yeah. He said, it's true, but he says it's a bunch of baloney. That's what he told me.
He was actually wrong in that. There's the Gun-Free School Zone Act of 1995, Penal Code 626.9, and that allows for 1,000 feet zone around schools that are gun-free zones, and there's a whole bunch of different attributes to that. Within that, there are exceptions. And one of them is if you have a CCW and you're driving on Clark Avenue and you're slicing Yuba City High School in half, you're not required to unload your firearm. You are exempted from having that 1,000-foot buffer of a school zone. Now, Penal Code 626.9 used to allow for concealed carry holders to walk right on the campus and pick their kids up from school. And that got modified about almost 2 years ago now to where we are now required either to have a written permission from the superintendent to walk on a campus, or the school board can pass what's called a board policy. And so many schools are passing board policies that our insanity gym up there has now got another assembly bill in front of them to further take the ability of school districts to manage their own affairs. And they're trying to take the authority away from school districts to allow for concealed carry on the campus. Right now, the only thing that prevents you, I, the janitor, the teacher in the math class from carrying on the school zone is, and in the classroom, is the school board or the superintendent. And if the superintendent's opposed to it, the school board, he works for the school board, so the school board has full authority. So around here locally, a number of schools have passed concealed carry, policies for school districts. All of the charter schools here locally, Faith Christian School, that's where my kids go, they have a board policy. East Nicholas, Markham, Illinois, I think New Estro has one. I don't know if Sutter's working on one or not, but it is so foundational in that penal code. All they have to do is pass a board policy that says, you know, concealed carry is authorized with a lawfully, a licensed carry holder. And so the 1,000 feet thing, driving past a school, doesn't apply if you have a valid concealed carry license. If you're just running amok with a firearm, they'll charge you with something new. So you'll be fine. Again, it's Penal Code 626.9, and it's very easy to sort through. And the only thing that changed 2 years ago was the blank check for you and I to walk right on campus. Now we have to work with our school board or the superintendent.
Is there any lobbying take place to try to assure that there are at least one or two teachers or administrators or somebody else who has the training and certification for a CCW on campus? Because right now our schools are targets.
Yep.
In the high school, we are taught to put children along the wall, sitting on the floor, nice little targets, and no way to protect them. Is there any legislation, any lobbying, anything going on where we can make it more dangerous for someone who wishes to do them harm to come on campus?
Nothing needs to be done. The school board has full authority to allow for that concealed carry.
Yeah, but what if your school board doesn't do it?
Then pressure them as parents. This is what I have, a formatted email, and I say, just talk to your superintendent about getting it accomplished. And if they absolutely dig in their heels and say no, then say, I am a parent or I am an employee, and they have a responsibility for safety. And there's not an elementary school in this area that I'm aware of that has any type of site safety plan. If somebody comes on there on any given campus with a sword, a propane bomb, a knife, a croquet mallet, an axe, I'm just naming some of the things that have been brought onto school campuses. They don't have a way to deal with that. They just say, oh my, something should be done. And they call 911. Well, that doesn't help. And the farther out you are, if you're at Loma Rica or Challenge School, you're 100% on your own. And so even here in downtown Yuba City, law enforcement, when seconds count, law enforcement's only minutes away. And I've got friends in law enforcement, love them to death, wouldn't do their job for a second, no, have no desire. But as far as your particular school, it really comes down to banding together. And I don't know what school district you're with, but Yuba City and Marysville, the two largest districts in the area, just have their head in the sand over the issue.
Yes, they have.
I think that there's a groundswell in administrators and parents that's coming their way that they don't understand is coming. And I tried to reach out to Gay Todd over in Marysville and say, hey, I'm getting a lot of inquiries. I sent her a bunch of information, and I made it nowhere. And I don't have a stake in the game over there because I don't have any kids in that school district. That would be my home school district, but because of the craziness, I don't have my kids in there. my school, Faith Christian, has a board policy because they understand. If somebody charges into a 5th grade classroom or a 10th grade math class and they want to harm children, the teacher should shoot them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that.
If-
And
And
so I'm hoping that there is something underfoot. For
Yeah.
many, many years, for 26 years, I taught at Marysville. And I had my CCW for a long time while I was there. When I moved into the Yuba City, it was not so much that it was against the law, but you're going to get fired before this last law.
which even people I knew in Yuba City, they figured if I get fired, I don't care. If I save kids, I don't care. But now because of the changes in the penal code, it could be a prohibiting class misdemeanor, which means that they couldn't even protect their own families for 10 years because they would be in a prohibited class, couldn't possess firearms. So they changed the stakes. And really the burden of safety on those campuses and the burden of the children and the parents and the walk-on coaches and the staff and the cook, the lunch lady, everybody is squarely on the shoulders of the school board. And I'm very passionate about this. I believe a lot in the Second Amendment and the Constitution, but this has really nothing to do with it. If you put all your sheep in a pen, you protect your sheep. And it's as simple as that. And they don't have a plan. So, I mean, if the trap team is practicing, no one's going to assault them. What should that tell the school board? Frankly, a shotgun is one of my favorite tools. It solves a lot of problems, but it makes people nervous in the mall. So we carry concealed. Yes?
First of all, I want to thank you for what you do.
Oh, you're welcome.
And we got our CCWs from you also. And in fact, I own the sister to your Smith & Wesson 9mm.
Yeah.
Our whole family took the class that day out at Dominic's, Nevis's.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, I'm a life member of the NRA, and so are my children. But they put these laws in here, the numbers to be aware of what's coming our way. And one of them is that a school board superintendent or that anymore can't give you permission. I don't think it's passed yet, because our whole family has letters from the school board that they want us on there, especially like at their harvest festival and different things. A lot of people are milling around, but I didn't know if you've heard any more, but I can't remember the number on that. SB 345 or something like that.
I haven't been able to get caught up from, they came back from a month vacation, and in, I think it was either 2.5 or 3 weeks, they passed 623 bills.
Yeah.
They're not even reading them. If you've ever tried to read your voter pamphlet and you're reading page after page of proposition or whatever, they're not even reading them. They're having staffers say, yeah, why not? Or they say, oh, you sponsored this? Well, I'll vote for that if you'll vote for mine. There's no possible way for them to have a conscious decision on 623 bills in a year, let alone to run them through in a month. And those are just the ones that they passed, not the ones that died in committee and all that stuff. So the last I heard, that was resting in a subcommittee.
Okay, that's what, because I talked to the principal out there, and I said, I don't want to do anything out of, because I don't want to put him on, on the carpet. And he said, no, right now we're still okay. And he said, I got all your names in there, so anyway. But anyway, I just didn't know if you heard any more about that. And
I don't know.
I want to thank you for taking over my wife when she was shooting out there.
Hopefully you had fun. Yeah, there you go.
Can you speak on the importance of the CCW, Chris?
Sure. Golly, where do I begin? Okay, we'll start with our criminally insane legislature. AB 109 was a really bad thing in the prison realignments and discharging many people with very violent records to be released. That was only compounded by Prop 47 and 57. Prop 47 decriminalized many narcotics violations for people that were already in jail and convicted, as well as it decriminalized basically any deviant behavior of theft below $950. So they will literally go into Target and make sure that whatever they're stealing is not going to exceed $950. They could steal my Glock pistol and get caught 100 feet from where they stole it from. And they'll say, hey, this isn't your pistol. He said, yeah, I know, I stole it. Well, the officer will tuck it under his arm and give him a citation and tell him, you should stop stealing guns and be in court on the whatever, because they're not going to jail for even theft of a firearm. Yesterday, I'm coming back from camping, and we're in this huge lot with truckers and RVs and everything else. And I look over, and I saw it, and the reason it stuck out to me is there's a minivan surrounded by all these RVs and everything else. I don't know if you know where this is. It's called Casa de Fruta on 152. It's huge. There's 1,000 people around, and this minivan's in there tucked in with all these RVs. And he stepped to the side, and I figured out he just stole that bicycle off the back of the RV next to him. And so those people are out there, and if they get caught, they're frankly not going back to jail. Many of the things that would have got a convicted felon thrown back in jail are not happening anymore. We've changed our lifestyles considerably. When ATMs first came out, that was the coolest thing ever. You mean I can get money any time of the day? That was the coolest thing ever. Now, we don't go to ATMs after dark. I have the Yuba Sutter Gang Task Force out here talking to us, and they said, you shouldn't go to Walmart late at night. And he said it several times. And finally I said, what do you consider late at night? He said, 7 p.m. I said, you're kidding me. I was going to go there after this meeting. He said, why? Well, I need milk, diapers, whatever. But the reality is that there are a lot of new threats. And I don't think the preponderance of people are out there to hurt us. But they are not afraid to steal from us. And I think that puts us in a greater threat. And in other words, you're just walking to your vehicle in the parking lot tonight, and there's somebody stealing out of that car. Would they hurt you to get away? I believe they would. Are there more people on the street that would hurt you to take what you have? I do believe that's true. I have a firearm on me as often as I can, and that is solely to protect myself and my family. That is absolutely it. If someone's harming you, I'll try to intervene. But it's not, as far as like a bravado thing or a vigilante thing, but it is about self-protection. And I think in a lot of cases, there's a lot of good people that get hurt, not because they were looking for trouble, but because the fight came to them. And I tell people all the time, I'm a bit of a chicken. If I can't outrun it, I'll shoot it. But we have what we call threat awareness. It's where we look around when we come out of Home Depot or Harbor Freight or Raley's, and we look left and right for people driving way too fast. Look left and right for creepy people. They're all over. I think some of the most dangerous things I do is at work. And I have a personnel rule that doesn't allow me to carry at work. Actually, technically, I can have a firearm. I can't have projectiles. And I have 2 paragraphs tell me what a bullet is. I know what a bullet is. But I go to places at work I would never go to in the day. Underneath a bridge on I-80? No, it's not my style. But those same people are at Fry's Electronics in the parking lot. And I don't know what their agenda is. I don't know anything about a lot of people, but I carry it for self-protection. And I think the importance of it is that when you look at the crime rate in Sutter County versus anywhere in Oakland, the entire state of Arkansas versus Los Angeles County, it will tell you that those things make a difference. In the sense that in Montana, If you drive past a disabled vehicle in Montana and you get seen by a state trooper, he will chase you down, give you a ticket before he renders aid to that other person, because people die out in the cold. And if you don't have a firearm in your vehicle, the state trooper says, why not? Everybody has one out here, and it's perfectly legal. So look at the entire state of Nevada, their crime rate versus ours. But then you go to Clark County, which is in Washoe County, where they have a lot of laws that are starting to filter through. And if you talk to my friends that live over in Nevada, they say, you guys keep ruining this. Quit coming over here. Because a lot of people from California have migrated over there because the tax laws support us as retirees and small business owners. And then they keep passing liberal stuff. So it's getting weird. But I carry a concealed weapon absolutely for self-protection. I train because it's fun. It's a tremendous amount of fun.
One of the things to pay attention to about a person who does have a CCW as compared to someone who does not, you walk differently, you look different, you are not a target. When you know you don't have a weapon, you look different. You look like a target. And so years and years ago, when I first started carrying, I realized that people were looking at me differently because I was no longer quite as nervous.
Yeah.
And I think that alone, the fact that I looked different so I wouldn't have to use it, made a difference.
Yeah, and statistics bear out that concealed weapons holders are far less likely to be involved in an altercation. But if that altercation comes to physical force or great bodily harm or attempted murder or something like that, they're also far more likely to survive, unless it's a bear. Then it doesn't matter. Sorry, weird statistics. You're only 4% likely to survive a bear attack if you have a weapon than if you don't. Yeah. Bear spray works best. So, anyway, is that it? Oh, one more.
How's it going?
Good.
Obviously, our system is not going to work. They're going to infringe. We have a corrupt government. You say we don't have a voice, but if we look at our beloved president, and the fake news, what does he do? He tweets everything, right? He bypasses that. So my question is, how many times does Jerry Brown go out to Calusa and shoot? And we need that posted, we need that videoed and put on Facebook or YouTube. And, that's going to be our new voice. We're going to have to just walk away from government because they're just going to implode. And they're not going to follow the Constitution. So...
Well, hypocrisy in California hasn't been a big deal. Look at Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, he was anti-gun in the legislature as he could be, but he owns a ton of them. And the hypocrisy was not lost on me, but it wasn't held against him. So I don't know how often Jerry Brown goes to shoot. I just know that it happens, and seems like it's been about 6 or 8 months, but he pulled a building permit for a little 1,400 square foot retirement, or 1,800 square foot, just a small house. That was in the paper. So it would be awesome. I don't know how much it would. What's that? He needs those guns to protect himself. Yeah. I don't know how much it would carry. I mean, it would be nice to see, but it seems like hypocrisy in that group seems to be okay. So. Oh, absolutely.
I think that's where people should start. Because, we can't, we're not going to sit there and follow. It's like going to the library and researching something when you can just go straight to Google. It's time to get the news from people.
Talk through the microphone. I'm sorry. It doesn't get recorded. It
doesn't get recorded. Well, it's just, it's like we need to get direct to the people. I mean, we can go through the library, we can research, or we can just, flip out our phones and we can Google this and get all the information we need. Everybody has a phone. Everybody has a recording device. All this stuff can be documented. Parking lots, you're talking about you can't even go to Walmart at nighttime. You have your phone out. You have camera devices. I mean, all this stuff can be exposed. Exposed, that's the word, that's the root. That's what's going to take down the corruption. And, you start from the top, but it's really at the bottom what's pushing that up. But, you start taking a few of those links out, and it'll collapse like dominoes. And our gun rights is a serious nature, because it's just a proven fact. All over the world, they take their guns, they take their lives. And, they want to make us defenseless. It's a new world order, it's an agenda, and it's got to be fought with. And you can't sit these guys, they're getting primed with, billions of dollars coming from the Illuminati, and tell me, how does $5 trillion disappear from our country? You take a house, you take a $250,000 house, okay? That's 20 million houses, okay? How does that disappear?
I have no idea.
But you have all this stuff coming back into government, and you have these people that are losing their souls and to go take people's rights because they know they're going to sit there and clobber them. And, so...
You mentioned the New World Order, and which I think is the UN.
Oh, definitely.
But if you...
Well, they got to start somewhere.
If you look at the UN doctrines and the small arms treaties and things like that they've tried to get the U.S. to sign on to, small arms is anything that being carried by one man. That's what they consider a small arm. Whether it's a handgun up to a bazooka or 50 cal, and they're looking for major bans on that stuff and how that stuff is trafficked around the world and everything else. And I think that is a huge threat to our Constitution because it's directly in contradiction to our Constitution. And that is where I think it was Obama, it could have been Clinton that wanted to sign on to that. And everybody was opposed to it.
But we do not have a government. We have people. The people are in charge of the government. We are government. We are the government. We run this nation. The government, if they want to go out there and they want to play this game of tyranny, then you know what? It is our constitutional right to say, you no longer exist. And it's unconstitutional.
True.
It's like them coming into our church and telling them how we can worship.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with our life. We have a God-given liberty and a way of life that they cannot infringe on, but they think they can.
We're sort of off topic, but when you talk about our voice, if you go to it's the Board of Elections, Secretary of State's website, and you look at how counties voted on propositions, and you look at the total number of votes, and then you look at the straight party line votes. In other words, who voted for Kashkari, who voted for Brown. And you realize that we have a tremendous amount of people in California that aren't voting.
Even the voting system's not even valid anymore. It's just totally fraudulent. I mean,
I don't know. I've been voting absentee for as long as I can remember.
And that's one of our worst cases where there's most fraud is in absentee ballots. And they're being corrected liberal, and it's just, we're not having the proper voice. So it's time to use technology in our favor.
Maybe that's what the Second Amendment's for.
Praise God.
Exactly.
Power to the people.
Well, and that's what our founders wanted to make absolutely sure. They had just thrown off a tyrannical government, and they wanted to make absolutely sure that no citizen that came after them would not be able to do that. It's as simple as that. So it's worth the fight, I guess.
Okay, young ladies and gentlemen, no questions? No questions yet? Wait till they take some of your rights and you'll have questions.
You guys are amazing. I have heard and met so many of you guys over the years. It is just amazing. Very proud of you guys. It's awesome.
Okay, no more questions?